Good morning, everybody. MG here, MGCovers, bringing you a brand new sports handicapping video. Title of this video is Week 1 NFL Preview between the Dallas Cowboys and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. First game of the NFL season. Super excited. We're going to dive into that and give you the way I handicap this game and also a potential lean on the game. Before we do that, as always, love to have you as a subscriber to the channel. If you want to learn about sports handicapping, have a ton of content on this channel. You will learn a lot about sports handicapping, the absolute unadulterated truth, and a lot of playlists about NFL football, handicapping college football as well. If you want to follow me on all the social media outlets, I am MGCovers, covers spelled with a Z. You can see the link, not the link, but you can see how to spell it there on the screen. So let's dive into it, guys. We're here. Week 1 of the NFL season is here, and we have Tampa Bay Super Bowl champions from last year at home facing the Dallas Cowboys. Now, what is unique about handicapping this early in the season, and this is very important, we do not have stats. And what I mean by that, my stat model becomes very legit per se after we have 3 weeks of data. Well, we don't have any data. You really can't use the preseason, and you really can't use last year's stats. A lot of the teams are different. And even if you were going to use those, that's not, quote, recent stats. So really, the way to handicap this early in the NFL season, we have to use what we call situational angles. And so what we're trying to determine, which team has more situational angles in their favor. And once you find that, more times than not, that will be the direction to go in as far as placing a wager or picking a team. All right, so first and foremost, very important for NFL is quarterbacks and coaching. So we're going to look at those two quarterbacks. And why is that important? Just to give you an idea, let's look at last year's teams that made the playoffs, and let's determine whether or not they had a good quarterback. Kansas City, good quarterback. Buffalo, good quarterback. Pittsburgh, good quarterback. Tennessee, good quarterback. Baltimore, good quarterback. Cleveland, good quarterback. And, of course, Indianapolis made the playoffs in the AFC as well. So 6 out of those 7 teams had really good quarterbacks, right? Let's look at NFC. Green Bay, good quarterback. New Orleans, good quarterback. Seattle, good quarterback. My Redskins made the playoffs with a losing record. The East was really bad last year. Tampa Bay, good quarterback. Rams, pretty good quarterback. And Chicago Bears. So you always have a few teams that sneak in. But for the most part, in order to make the playoffs, you have to have a good team. You have to have a good quarterback. And so teams that have good quarterbacks and make the playoffs, they win a lot of games. And what do we know about winning in the NFL? Teams that cover in the NFL also win 80% of the time. That's a fact. You can go back and check years past on that. And what I mean by that is, so you can sort of take the point spread out of the equation and really just look and try to determine which team will win the game, because that team that you believe will win the game, they will also cover 80% of the time. So when you look at Tampa Bay, we'll start with Tom Brady. No doubt is going to go down as the best quarterback in NFL history. Granted, he's a year older, but there's very little to indicate that he would not have a very good season, similar to what he had last year. Granted, he's older, but definitely more efficient. Second year in this offense. What's interesting to note about Tampa Bay, this is a huge situational angle. They bring back all 22 starters. That's incredible. That's rare that happens in the NFL when you bring back your entire staff. So everybody's familiar with the coaches. Everybody's familiar with the scheme. I personally believe Tampa Bay will be even better. Let's look at the quarterback for Dallas. Dak Prescott is coming off a significant injury, and that's important to note. We're not saying he's going to have a terrible season. That's just something to note. And more importantly, he played 0 snaps in the preseason. So he has not played competitive football in a real game situation since his injury. So that's very important. So there's no doubt situationally looking at this, who's the better quarterback in this specific game at this specific time? No doubt it's Tom Brady. And I would also give a coaching lean to Bruce Arians simply because, he's returning that entire staff. All right, so I wrote down here trends. What you'll see, especially if you're new to sports betting, a lot of people come into sports betting during NFL season. You'll see a lot of trends. And what I mean by that, and you have to be aware of these trends and be cautious. You'll see trends like teams that won the Super Bowl when favored by 8 or more points in week one have lost 43% of the time. And again, not saying that is a stat. I just made that up off the top of my head. But when we're handicapping, and this is true even if we have a stat model, as a professional, what you should do is you factor everything, but you never overreact to one thing. So even if that was a legit stat, let's say teams that won the Super Bowl and they're playing week one, the stat is if they're favored by 8 points, they've lost against the spread 43% of the time. Okay, so that's one angle, right? So would you give more clout to that stat or the fact that Tampa Bay is returning 22 starters? Because that trend stat, and this is important about trend stat, that particular stat incorporates teams other than Tampa Bay, right? Because that's previous years. So you have to be very careful when you're looking at trends. You'll see a lot of quote handicappers pretending to be professionals that will post trends like that. So just definitely be aware of that. And even if it is a legit trend, again, we're not going to overreact to that. It might be something that we consider, but definitely not going to overreact. So again, I talked about the 22 starters, and this is important. We've just had, and let's take a look at the line where we're at right now. And this really just went down while I was making this video. This line opened up at 7. It stayed at 7.5 for a good bit. We've had crazy line movement here in the last hour. This line's all the way up to 9, 9.5 at Pinnacle. That's your offshore books. Some of the books, Vegas, looks like the Westgate Circa still have it at 8.5. So getting some movement there in favor of Tampa. Now, one thing to note about the line when you're dealing with a 7.5 line, that 7.5 line is very important. Why is that important? Because a 7.5 line, you're going to have to basically win by 2 scores in order to cover that. And now that the line is 9, say, or either 8.5, the numbers in between 7.5 to 9.5 are basically the same. And let me explain why. Because the scoring increments in NFL, as you know, are 3 points and 7 points most likely. So Tampa Bay, if they're up by 7, they can kick a field goal and cover that spread. So there's nothing to be alarmed about if you're leaning towards Tampa when you're looking at a 7.5, 8, 8.5, 9, 9.5. So those numbers, those spreads are basically the same because of the scoring increments in NFL football. Now, if it goes to 10, which I do not believe that it will, would be very significant, right? Because Dallas could, you would get, if Tampa Bay wins by, if it lands on a 10, it would be a push for the game. But I don't think it's going to make it to 10. So when you're dealing with a spread that requires 2 scores, you have to ask yourself, is the team that we're wagering on have the potential to score enough points to cover? Now, this is a very important stat. Last year, Tampa Bay averaged 30 points per game. And more times than not in the NFL, if you can score 30 points on an NFL team, you're going to cover that. You're going to end up winning by 2. And like I say, Tampa has a pretty good defense. They'll probably approach this game like they did with Kansas City, getting too detailed here, but a lot of 2-man under, keeping everything in front of them, trying to limit big plays and letting their offense do the work. So sort of review all of this now. We have Tom Brady. We know what we're going to get out of him tonight. You're returning all 22 starters for Tampa Bay. A lot of question marks for Dak, and just the fact that it is his first game back. I mean, it could be great, but it could definitely lean towards a disastrous return. The line, you got movement that favors Tampa, even though it's pushing up to 9, 9.5. All starters returning for Tampa Bay, and Tampa Bay is averaged last season 30 points, so they definitely can cover the 2. And I will give you a heads up. I did play this in my super contest. I have 2 entries, one with some clients and one on my own, but actually played Tampa. That line for the contest was 8.5. So if you're looking for a lean, I would definitely say Tampa. Not personally wagering it per se, but definitely leaning in that direction. So my model for NFL will come out after week 3. It's the most successful model I've ever created. In fact, I'll probably go to my grave never creating anything better than that NFL model. If you want access to that, along with all my other power rankings for all those other sports, you can get that. It's $49.95 per month, and you get access to all my coaching videos as well. Unlimited email access to me. You can ask me questions. And also, if you want all of that I just mentioned, in addition to all my plays for all sports, that's $99 per month. Currently on a 7-3 run in soccer, having a lot of fun handicapping soccer, made a lot of tweaks. So get all those soccer plays in addition to NFL, college football once it gets rolling. And if you want to join for an entire year, that gives you the most value. You save about $600 instead of paying $100 a month. You can join for $4.99. That gives you access to everything for an entire year. So, hey guys, super pumped about the NFL season. In the comments below, who do you like tonight? Do you think Dallas can cover with the points, or do you think Tampa wins here in a blowout, scoring by 2? Love to hear your thoughts on that, and we'll talk to you guys soon. Peace.